Welcome back to your Fire series of videos. That was a bad joke. Sorry about that. Not feeling too hot. That's another bad joke. So anyway, welcome back to your videos on Firebase and incorporating them into your exam project. At this point, you should have programmed your test to send student responses. I'm actually going to delete this one because it's all zeros. I'm actually going to delete all my invalid ones. Remember we had that problem before where it was just sending zeros because we weren't checking the score appropriately. So, you know, we're just going to delete the bad ones. Anyway, what we need to do this time is we need to now figure out how to read data off of this. Because remember the goal of the project is to create a midterm review site that tells the user kind of how they do in relation to the rest of their class. So I'm going to go back to the documentation guide. We already looked how to update, but what we also want to do is we want to know how to retrieve data. So let's go figure out how to do that. I'll click retrieve data, and eventually it might load if the hamsters in my computer pedal faster. Oh, good. So there's actually a bunch of different ways to do this. The way you're technically supposed to do this is you're technically supposed to do an event listener, which listens for when a value is done changing and then sends a callback to your app. But I'm going to be honest with you, there's only a limited number of cases where that's really even valid. There's so many more cases where you just need to get a snapshot of the database once, and that's what we're going to do for this. You know, that's not to say it's never useful, because it's certainly, like, using callbacks and event listeners for data changes is good, but it's not something that you just, like, need to start with, and it's a lot easier to just do this once. For example, it's one line of code to just do this once, so this is actually what we're going to use. So let's go back to our JavaScript. In our send data function, this says Firebase database update blah 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 blah. Right? Okay. So what we're going to do is after this, we're going to call a read. We're going to call a read data function, which ideally will be able to read data once it's done writing to the database. So we'll write the call there, and then we'll declare it down here. I'm actually going to steal their code. We can skip the authentication thing because remember we already allowed it public access. If you didn't allow it public access, here's where you'd check to see if the user is currently logged in. Again, waste of time for learning purposes. All right, and here's the code. Let's see what it does. Of course, we don't want username. We're going to have to change a little bit. So it says firebase.database. We know what that does. .ref. Now this is where we're actually going to change this. For our purposes, we actually want to just get all of the data out of the database. So instead of ref/users, let's say ref, let's get rid of that, /responses. And this .once thing means just read it once and get the value of everything, and then do this. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to log this snapshot thing, and you actually have to do .val, otherwise it gives you mumbo jumbo. .val is like the Firebase way of saying get the actual JavaScript value out of here, just so we can see what it looks like. So I'm going to save this and upload it. Theoretically, GitHub won't break again, but we all know how lucky I am with that. Cross your fingers. That was quick. Do we think it's going to work? I don't know. Going to reload sources. Do we have it? Okay, looks like it should. So let's go ahead. Let's go on through and take our test here. And what we should be looking to get back here is we should be looking to get back an object full of student response objects. So it's the object, and there's 2 student response objects in our Firebase, and that's what we're getting back. If you open these up, these are the same structure as what's in our Firebase. Now, if you don't think this is the most magical thing you've ever seen, then please go take another class. No, but seriously, this is pretty cool, and very, you know, on a code side, extremely difficult to do. So Firebase has done a fantastic job. All right, but what do we need to do? We want to show the student how they're doing compared to the class average. So first we need to calculate the class average, and then we need to calculate the student's average. Luckily, we're all math majors, right? Maybe not, but we all know what to do. We calculate the average by doing, the total score divided by the total number of scores. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's first calculate the student score. So what that is that is checking again to see. We probably could have done this differently, or did we? I think we did score. We did score a correct counter. Isn't that neat? So we did score correct counters. So we can just do that. So the student score is equal to the number they got correct divided by the length of the question array. Okay, now do the other ones, though. To get the class average, that's a little bit trickier. So we're going to say variable class average, currently it's 0. And what we need to do is we need to loop through all of these objects and calculate the average for each one. All right, if it's an array, it's easy. If it's an object, it's still easy, but it's a little bit different. So the way that you do this is you say, you need to get the keys out of the big object. So we're going to say variable keys is equal to the object library dot, I think it's keys, or is it all keys? I think it's keys. Object dot keys, and then the argument to that is this snapshot dot val thing. Okay, we want to get all of the keys from snapshot.val. Let me just double check that. Get all keys of object JavaScript. I think it's dot keys. Dot keys. Okay, so we're getting the keys. Now let's loop through. That's an array now. This turns all the keys into an array, so we can do this a lot easier. For variable I is 0, I is less than keys.length, I plus plus. Okay, so a response object is equal to snapshot.val at keys at I. Right, a response object is the object inside snapshot.val at the key specified to each key we're looping through. I could break that up into 2 lines for make it a little bit more readable. So let's say variable key is equal to keys at I, and now we can just put key here. It's a little bit easier to read, I guess, right? Okay, so each response is an object itself, so we actually kind of have to do the same thing. So let's say variable response keys is equal to, we have to do object.keys using response this time, because we want all the keys out of response. And we'll write another for loop that loops through response keys.length. Okay, so now we're able to open this up and check each one of these. Okay, so we can say variable response key is equal to response at, what is this? Oh, response keys at I. Response key is equal to response keys at I. And then the value. So how are we going to do this? We want to calculate the average. So let's store a value up here. So we'll say variable response score. Yeah, variable response score. That starts at 0. Or do we want to redeclare that each time? No, we'll keep it out here. Response score starts at 0. And we want to say that, remember, it's just zeros and ones, so if it's a 0 and we add 0 to 0, that does nothing. If it's a 1, we add it. So we'll just say response score is equal to whatever it is, plus equals response at response key. Right? So we want to loop through each of these and add whatever value this is to response score. So in this particular object, response score should be 1, 2, 3, 4. And then after we're done calculating response score, we could say response average equals response score divided by response keys dot length. The score divided by the number of questions. I guess you can do, instead of response keys, you could just do question array dot length too. It's the same thing. Wow, we did it. Now, if you have additional data points, you need to, do something a little bit different here, like check to see if you're actually, checking if a response is 1 or 0 and not just someone's name, but, don't worry about that for now. Okay, what do we do with the average once we get it? This is just the average for one response. We need actually a whole class average, which is here. So we should say class average is, we want to add to class average. We want to add response average to it. Then we'll divide it by the total number of responses afterwards, all right? Cool. And then we'll say that the class average, in fact, this is a little misleading because instead of class average, this should probably be class score. So we're going to add the response average to the class score. And that's the average number of questions they get right. I guess that's just their percentage, isn't it? Right? This is just the percentage, not multiplied by 100. I'm having a brain fart. This is very silly. We need to calculate the class average. So we're adding all the points divided by, okay. So we need to add class score should be the number of points that they scored in total. So the response score. We don't need to calculate average here. That's where I'm going wrong. So class score should be plus equal to response score. And then when we're done, we should divide class score by the total number of responses available. So we could say class average is equal to class score divided by the number of responses, so that's keys.length is the number of responses, times the number of questions in each one. There we go. We did it. Some mental gymnastics. Okay. That should work, assuming that this reads properly, which we already know it does. So that's good. Now let's just make sure that we kind of display the, information. So I've actually added a little div to my HTML. I'm not sure if you have this too, but it's just another row with an ID. I gave it the ID of score report. And then I gave our main div here the ID of main, which I'm pretty sure you had already. But the goal is, once the test is done, we want to get rid of this main div and show this score report div. So that's pretty easy. We know the test is over at this point, so we can actually do some jQuery and say main hide, which hides it, and score report show, which you don't get bonus points for guessing this, but it shows it. I've also added a little thing for the total score. And we'll do more to this in the third series of videos, but I just want to output what the total score is. So we want to output the student's score, and we also want to output the class average. So let's go ahead and say, we know the class average, we know the student score, so let's say that the HTML for score report is going to be equal to your score plus student score plus line break class average plus class average. So we'll output both. Okay. Let's upload this and see if it works. I guess that's the next step. Sure, why not? If JavaScript likes Mr. Myers, this will work. Of course, JavaScript does not like Mr. Myers. I mean, GitHub. You guys really don't know. In the last video, it literally crashed for 2 hours on me. I was so mad. I was about to email GitHub and be like, I'm trying to teach people how to use your platform. Please help. Okay, this looks all updated and everything. Oops. Alright, so I got a 0 apparently. Now, is that true? I don't think that's true. Let's check the database. No, I should have gotten this. So this is not calculating either one correctly. Because it's saying the average is not a number and my score is 0. Let's see how we're doing this. Snapshot.val key. This should work. This should be fine. Response keys is object dot keys using response. There's no error. Maybe correct counter is not working for this. I'm going to pause this while I figure this out. I don't want to keep you guys on here. Hold on a sec. Boo-boo, see this? Response keys at I? That's silly. That's got to be X. That's totally where I messed up. All right, let's upload it again. Boy, GitHub is crushing me. Processing. Very good. Let's make sure it's the right one. Nope, response keys at I, response keys at X. That's what it should be. Okay, taking the test, selecting random answers, just like a real test. My score is still a 0. So I did not figure this out. I should not have a 0. We're going to pause again, and I'm another dumb mistake. I must be tired. I don't know. See this question array 1? No, question array run dot length. That's much better. It doesn't actually help the fact that the student score is still not working. Maybe correct counter just doesn't work. I think I probably got to fix that. It really should be working, but I guess if it's not, we could still technically, you know, have this happen. But I don't know. I'll fix that in a sec. Let's just make sure that the class average is getting corrected, and then we'll worry about fixing that student counter thing. So. Okay. Question array 1 dot length is what we need. There it is. You'll notice that as I'm refreshing GitHub pages, I'm just checking the source of the JavaScript that's loaded to make sure it's loading the correct one, because what you don't want to do is test the wrong file and think that you're doing something wrong, but you actually aren't. That can be annoying. Okay, there we go. That's a little bit better. It's still 0.25, so we do have to just, you know, multiply everything by 100 here. Just like so. But other than that, that's still fine. My score is still 0, which doesn't make any sense. Student score is correct counter divided by question array times length. I still don't understand why that's 0. It must be the way that we're doing correct counter. Like, I thought we were doing this correctly. Equals correct answer. Oh, I guess if selection is... So for mine, because I stored the actual index of the correct answers and not the actual value of the correct answers, I need to do something different. I'm not sure if you do. It might be just working on yours, but I'm going to do something different because the selection is the inner HTML, so I have to do the same thing that I did down here when we were parsing the data, which is like answer array at I.index of. Yeah. So we have to do if correct answers at question counter. So what we need to do is we need to do answer array at question counter dot index of selection. That's how I'll fix it. Okay, let's see if that works. I think it should. It probably should, because that's the same thing that we're doing below. Again, if you actually stored the values of the correct answers, which to be honest might just be better, I don't know. But if you actually store the values, you don't have to fix this in the way that I'm doing this right now. Because I didn't store the values, I just stored the index at which it's saved. Which, I'm going to be honest with you, is probably bad. So don't do that. But let's go ahead and see if correct counter is actually being correct. Who knows if it is? I sure don't. There we go. It is working. And of course we have to multiply my score, the student score, by 100 as well. But anyway, there you go. So that concludes the portion of the video where we set up and use Firebase. Firebase is useful for a lot of things. You can update values. You know, depending on your project here, you probably want to stop and just think about the direction that you need to go, and what you might need Firebase for. And if you need any help doing some more advanced things for this project, let me know. We'll explore how to use more of Firebase later in the year, but this is really all we need for now. So in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to take this data that we've been able to read, and we're actually going to create Google Charts out of it. And I'll show you how to do that in the next video, which is really pretty fantastic and wonderful. But I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.